Right, so Israel have taken aim directly at the United Nations itself now, having fired both yesterday and the day before on a United Nations peacekeeper headquarters within Lebanon when their positions were known. Israel knowingly firing on UN peacekeepers, which is yet again, of course, yet another violation of international humanitarian law, as I'm sure you can imagine it would be. But why should we be surprised by it? Israel has made it obvious it cares nothing for international humanitarian law, and for as long as cover is provided for them internationally by the lies of the US, as well as within the UN itself, as the US protects Israel from any censure on the UN Security Council. But having directly attacked the UN itself now, as it has by striking UNIFIL headquarters, does this put the US or the UN in the more awkward spot? Because the US may have to now choose between their loyalties to Israel or their loyalties to the UN and international humanitarian law. But equally, if the UN does nothing still, even now, when its own people have been threatened and shot at, more people are going to be asking than already have been, frankly, if the UN is even fit for purpose when it seems powerless to do anything. Right, so Israeli aggression and atrocity. I think so many of us now, having been paying particular attention to the Middle East, perhaps more than we've ever done before over the past year, certainly, and having witnessed the scenes and imagery that have been brought to us uncensored via various social media platforms, might be completely unsurprised that Israel have now decided to directly attack the UN itself, having targeted deliberately and knowingly a United Nations interim force in Lebanon, UNIFIL headquarters within Lebanon, inside the blue line, which Israel is forbidden to cross into at the border town of Nakora, which is also near the southernmost Lebanese coast. An IDF Merkava tank opened fire directly at the UNIFIL headquarters there, hitting a watchtower dead centre yesterday, which caused the two occupants of said watchtower to fall, both having been hospitalised from their injuries, so we've been told they're not seriously hurt. Both of them having been Indonesian nationals, as it happens, because that's the thing with UNIFIL. It's a collaboration of some 46 separate UN nations who all commit some of their own troops to it. Where Israel were threatening the positions of 30 Irish UNIFIL Task Force peacekeepers a few days ago at Maroun al-Ras, which is 36 miles to the east, having now since backed down, incidentally. I covered that in more detail in a video the other day. It seems the IDF forces amassing near Nakora were completely unperturbed by the fact that lying between them and where they wanted to go were more UNIFIL troops unwilling to back down, their Irish comrades seemingly having instilled a belief that the IDF can and should be stood up to. The arrogance of the IDF now apparently wanting to show them differently by firing directly at them, upon the main peacekeeping base for UNIFIL in Lebanon, as this particular site actually is. It's striking at the heart of UNIFIL, therefore, as Israel demands the UN get out of their way. It's a firing directly at the heart of the UN in Lebanon. But it's not just as simple as that, because UNIFIL are an annually mandated peacekeeping force by the UN. They are handed their mandate every year by the UN Security Council to continue in their duties of patrolling the Blue Line, which is the border between Lebanon and Israel, since their inception in 1978, but especially since that mandate was expanded following the 2006 war between Israel and Lebanon. And this really is where matters for the UN should be coming to a head. They've made a direct strike against the UN this time. This should be crossing a line and no questions asked about that. The day before this strike, incidentally, the IDF attacked a UNIFIL position in Labune, UN position 131, as it's referred to, which is just to the southeast of Nakora, firing upon a bunker where UNIFIL peacekeepers were sheltering and damaging their vehicles and communication systems, deliberately firing to disable the perimeter's cameras, apparently, because God forbid the world see exactly what the IDF are up to, despite their own soldiers often proving to be the most informative sources of such things across the internet. So when is enough going to be enough for the UN now? Their response this time? Well, we're following up with the IDF, so hand-wringing in that case. The UN mission issued a single-line response to Israel, saying, "We remind the IDF and all actors of their obligations to ensure the safety and security of UN personnel and property and to respect the inviolability of UN premises at all times." Well, I hate to break it to you, but they don't care. Al Jazeera had the Israeli response, saying, Israel's military said its troops opened fire near a UNIFIL base after instructing UN forces in the area to remain in protected spaces. It said in a statement that Hezbollah fighters operate from within and near civilian areas in southern Lebanon, including areas near UNIFIL posts. The military said it is operating in southern Lebanon and maintains routine communication with UNIFIL. Israel's UN ambassador Danny Danon said he recommended that the peacekeeping force relocate 5 kilometers north, while the situation along the Blue Line remains volatile as a result of Hezbollah aggression, referring to the demarcation line between Lebanon and Israel. UN peacekeepers in a watchtower were hit by tank fire. That's on you. UNIFIL's mandate also isn't to Israel, it's to the UN, and they are there on the Lebanese side, where Israel are in violation of UN Resolution 1701 by simply being there. So Israel have no business telling UNIFIL to do anything. Again, Israel's excuse is that Hezbollah are inside because now everything, every building, every structure, every mosque, church, school, hospital, we all know the crack by now, all over again, is going to be Hezbollah, just as it was all Hamas in Gaza. You're literally that crazy, that arrogant, that you expect the world to believe the UN have Hezbollah operating within their own headquarters at UNIFIL. Israel are out of their tiny gourds. And all the UN's Israel mouthpiece Danny Danon could say was that UNIFIL should move back. Sorry, no. No can do. They are exactly where they should be. It is Israel that is encroaching. So the UN's somewhat limp response to this really isn't good enough. They should be beefing things up on the Lebanese border with a task force to support UNIFIL right now, in my view. You fire on the UN, you fire on all member nations. That's how it's meant to be. And all member nations should then come together to deal with a common threat, even if that happens to be another UN member, which of course, in my opinion, should now absolutely have its UN membership suspended, and the likes of Danny Danon and Gilad Erdan be sent home. Where is the excuse not to do it? Well, again, it comes back to the UN Security Council, doesn't it? And we all know who has a permanent seat there, don't we? To suspend a member state's rights and privileges, it has to be recommended by the UN Security Council that that be done. And any such action against Israel will just get vetoed by the US. So that's not going to happen. Perhaps the UN response makes sense when I'm sure they know that as much as anyone else does. But equally, this can't just go unpunished, because it just makes the UN peacekeepers themselves a more of a target for Israel that they think they can get away with carrying on targeting. That should be putting the US in an uncomfortable position. Think about it. The UN Security Council gives UNIFIL its mandate every year. They are fulfilling that mandate by standing their ground right now. The US assented to the UNIFIL mandate as members of the UN Security Council. Just last August is when that was renewed. It's supposed to be every September. It was a few days early for some reason this time around, but there we are. So it's only just been done. But now they are being attacked directly and illegally by Israel. So will you, the United States, still support Israel over the protection and rights of peacekeepers that you voted just 2 months ago to put back right in front of them, as they are now? Also, if the US were to choose to side with Israel in this instance, why did you sign off on UNIFIL's mandate if, as they are saying, Hezbollah have infiltrated them? It's that nonsense UNRWA again, when Israel claimed the chief UN aid agency, keeping people alive with aid, shelter, education and other needs in Palestine, were involved in the attack on October 7th by Hamas. It was nonsense then, but Israel kept on saying Hamas. They kept on saying Hezbollah. They keep on saying it now. And the US administration seemed to just keep saying, yep, fine, we believe you. Why would we not? You are completely trustworthy, and we are that stupid. I fully expect the US would side with Israel still, but they'd be damned for it all the more, and frankly their own role at the UN becomes one of little more than providing cover right now for genocide. If that were to happen, should the US's membership of the UN not be considered for suspension too? If something doesn't shift, if something isn't done about Israel's flagrant disregard for the lives of even UN peacekeepers now, it's just a matter of time before one of them is killed, and what are the UN going to do then? Strong words are not enough from the UN anymore. They need to do something. Meanwhile, the bravery of those Irish heroes in Maroun al-Ras has been one of the standout positive stories of recent days. There are precious few of them. But it took real courage to do what they did, having been offered an out and refusing to take it, putting their own lives on the line for those they were protecting, whilst the IDF used them and their outpost pretty much as human shields to prevent attacks from Hezbollah, who, well, they didn't attack, because they didn't want to put those Irish peacekeepers at risk. And people still call them the terrorists and not Israel? Yeah, get the detail of that story in this video recommendation here as your suggested next watch, and I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.